Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. Today was a very dramatic day where we saw scenes in Mpumalanga as the South African Police Service actually went into a compound and apprehended individuals who seemed to be associated with terror activities. So, according to the South African Police Services, this is what they said: working together with the provincial joint structure, including the Department of Home Affairs and other role players like police intelligence, the South African Police Service has uncovered a suspected military training base in White River and apprehended 19 Libyan nationals in connection with the discovery. This was the footage which we saw from this particular very dramatic, very troubling set of information earlier today.
Some few days back, the acting provincial commissioner of the SAPS in Mpumalanga, Major General Dr. Mpumalanga, convened the ProvJoint structure and informed them about the information regarding a place which was meant for security training, which seems to have been turned into a military camp. Then, hence, after the planning, today it's the execution of that. We found that there are 95 males. They are from Libya. They have been taken in now, and some actually this is still a process. We are still on the site. We're taking them in so that they could be processed. And also, it seems as if they could have contravened some Immigration Act. And so we are together with our counterparts, officials from the Department of Home Affairs. However, besides that, we had several cases reported. As I'm standing here next to this place in White River, it's Masoi, where the station has experienced a lot of cases, serious cases that were reported. Unfortunately, the victims didn't know the suspects, but they were mentioning in most of those cases that it was people of Asian nationality. And so we could be heading for a breakthrough in terms of this investigation of the cases that were reported. So we've got the team led by Major General Mupangwe here, leading in the police, making sure that they don't just be returned or repatriated to their countries. However, those unsolved cases are effectively dealt with. If maybe those people are the ones that the police have been looking for, as they will be charged and face the might of the law.
So the statement goes as follows, to go into it in full. Acting Provincial Commissioner of the South African Police Services in Mpumalanga, Major General Dr. Mpumalanga, convened the provincial joint structures 2 days ago after receiving intelligence information about the suspected camp. This led to a joint operation being carried out on Friday, 26 July, resulting in the raid and in subsequent arrest. The place, which was initially designated as a training site, appears to have been converted into an illegal military training base. The 95 individuals taken into custody are all Libyan nationals and are currently being questioned by the relevant authorities. This is a quote from the general. We take any threats to the security and the stability of our province and country very seriously. This operation demonstrates our commitment to acting swiftly and decisively against any activities that could undermine our national interests and ensure the safety of our citizens, because that is our primary mandate. According to the department, the investigation is still ongoing and further details will be provided as they become available. The South African Police Services would like to assure the public that there is no immediate threat to community safety. Wow, very serious events. And my comments on this particular event and everything that's happened today, and the general topic of security. First and foremost, the risk of terror is very high in many parts of Africa and has destabilized many parts of Africa. And in contrast with what has been happening in the Sahel region in North Africa, SADC has had historically low threats of terror, extremist groups. This kind of behavior has not really been something that has been prevalent in SADC. And it has been a blessing because it has allowed us to enjoy some security. Since the fall of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, the security threats in Africa have increased. And actually, the spread of extremist groups across the continent has increased. We have actually started to see the emergence of terror groups in places such as Mozambique. If you recall, there were some terror attacks in the Del Cabo region, and this has been troubling. Why did the Gaddafi demise lead to increased terror group activities? Gaddafi was a strong man in Libya, and he was an authoritarian, but one of the things that he provided to the region was security infrastructure, intelligence infrastructure, and he was able to stop the spread of extremist groups and to actually mitigate some of this stuff. But when he fell, there was a power vacuum. There were different military groups which started competing for power in Libya itself and in other parts of the North African region. And this led to and contributed to some of the insurgent attacks and extremist behavior we saw in the Sahel region. And up to now, there's still a crisis that is going on in Burkina Faso, in Mali, and Niger related to extremist group activities. So as that began to spread, we saw the emergence of groups such as Boko Haram, other groups in different parts of Africa. In Nigeria, Boko Haram was operating. All of these groups associated with organizations such as ISIL, ISIS, and it's been a concern. And this emergence of terror activity in Mozambique, I think, was a very big red card that we should, or red flag rather, that we should all have been paying more attention to. And I think this is linked to that creeping in within the Southern African region of this kind of activity, and we all have to be concerned about it. This week as well, the US Treasury announced that it is taking action against 2 individuals based in South Africa who are allegedly associated with the expanded activities of the Islamic State of Iraq and Syria, ISIS, on the African continent. The 2, along with another alleged ISIS agent based in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, have been subjected to sanctions. According to the US Treasury, these individuals serve as key financiers and trusted operatives, enabling the activities of ISIS and its leaders across Central, Eastern, and Southern Africa. They also serve as critical links between far-flung ISIS operations, including ISIS affiliates in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Mozambique, Somalia, and ISIS cells in South Africa, allowing ISIS leadership to leverage each affiliate's capacities to conduct terrorist attacks that undermine peace and security in the region. The decision of the US Treasury to sanction the 3 individuals, 2 based in South Africa, 1 in DRC, coincided with the 20th meeting of the Counter-ISIS Finance Group on the 23rd of July. And this group is a working group of the Global Coalition to Defeat ISIS, which includes more than 80 countries and international organizations. South Africa, however, is not a member of this coalition. It does seem as if there is this creep of these kinds of activities, extremist group activities in Southern Africa. And there's going to be a necessity for SADC to reconvene and deal with this issue. There's going to have to be a necessity for the African Union to also start paying more attention to this issue. But as also mentioned, the individual countries, because once you have terror activities beginning to emerge and become part of the South African reality, lived reality, that can destabilize the whole of Africa, because South Africa is the most industrialized African nation. key exporter to many African states, the most stable democracy in Africa. And once you start to undermine that democracy through these kind of activities, that can create real instability, economic decline, real threat to social stability across the region. Broadly, SADC should be very, very on high alert, should be on extremely high alert as a result of all of these things. I personally don't think these activities have been taken as seriously as they could be. This is an important conversation, the conversation around extremist groups, extremist ideologies, etc. There's another conversation which happens around immigration. As we know from Stats South Africa, there's been an increase in the number of foreign-born residents living in South Africa. And the two countries which have contributed to that predominantly have been Zimbabwe and Mozambique, although also in the top 10, you see countries such as Germany, such as England. So the immigration issue is an issue that is also linked to this conversation. However, I think we should be careful to not link a conversation about undocumented migration, which does need to be dealt with. It's a real thing. And this conversation about extremists from a particular country who have emerged here to participate, as it seems from the allegations, in this thing. Immigration is a real issue. It must be dealt with. The issue of porous borders must be dealt with. It's a real thing and it's a concern. But I don't think we should paint everyone with the same brush. These people who seem to be ostensibly involved in terrorist activity are not necessarily the same as all other groups of immigrants, legal immigrants, etc. So we ought to be very careful in that kind of a conversation. However, these developments are very worrying. Congratulations to the South African Police Service for taking this action, finding this military base, taking action as quickly as you did. I think it's important. I think as much as possible, there needs to be no space for the financing of terror groups. There needs to be no space for extremist ideologies and thinking in our discourse. And there needs to be no space for any terror groups to be mobilizing, operating, training in the SADC region. We have to really stamp them out as soon as they emerge. We cannot have the kind of challenges that have been in the Sahel region. Once you start having these kind of challenges, it becomes very difficult for the state to deliver any services. This can really be detrimental to South Africa. So congratulations to the South African Police Service. This investigation needs to be carried out expeditiously with the highest level of attention, because it's something that is, I think, an explosive piece of news and hopefully can be dealt with very quickly.